Hi, this is Lady Lecture K, and this is a Dreams Gadget tutorial. We're working our way through the cameras and lighting. This is this purpley one here, and we've got to sun and sky. Now, the sun and sky gadget, this is how you change the brightness of your level, the color of the sky, different fleck types and that sort of thing. It's very important when lighting your scene. So it's a good idea to get familiar with this particular gadget, because you don't want your scene just to have this blue sky as a default. Lots of levels have this. You want to play about with it, make your level a bit more unique. Then you get to know this gadget quite well. If we have a look at the default, before I stamp anything down, if you don't put any sun and sky in, this is what you get. So you get a blue sky. It's quite bright. There is a sun in the sky. This will look slightly different every time you load it up, because the flecks are sort of randomly placed. The sun will always be in this position, but whether there's lots of circles in front of it or behind it or whatever, it will look slightly different every time you load up. As you can see, there is a shadow on this object, so it's not midday. It's slightly later, I think. That gives you a shadow on all our objects, because the position of the sun does make a difference to where the shadows are, etc. Right, so let's stamp down our sun and sky. Now the sky will start wiggling and then it will settle down. Every time you change a sky, it rearranges itself with the flex, so you get movement in the sky. So beware of that. So when you change the skybox dynamically during the game, you will get movement and things in the sky as you do it, and it's not an instant thing. Sometimes the sky actually takes quite a long time to get from one mode to the next. It's a little annoying, to be honest, that you can't just flick straight from one design to another, but that's the way it is, unfortunately. Right, let's have a look at the gadget itself. So we have this big silvery ball. Now this is something you can move. So I'm holding R2 and I can move it around, and you can see it's moving some of the colours around in the sky, because there is a pattern to the sky. So this big blue patch, for example, I can move that into a different position by moving this, and you can move it up and down as well. So this just changes the position. It's like a big dome over your world, and you can move it around. Most people don't even touch this part, to be honest, but you can move the pattern around till you get it how you like it. So if you wanted a darker area in a particular part of your game, maybe that's where the dark lands are or something, then you can move this about, move it in the sky angle. We'll just reset to default by pressing triangle. There we go. That's the normal position of everything. There we go. Right, this gizmo then shows you the sun. This is the sun. If you move it closer to the grey, then that is the brightness of the sun at its most, and if you put it to the top, the brightness of the sun at its least. So that's 0 to 100%, like that. So let's have a look at the tweak menu and see how that is shown on here. So as you can see, as I move that down to the bottom, that's 100% brightness on that sun, and as I move it to the top, there we go, get to 0. And if I move this like this, you'll see it will move the sun up and down. You'll also notice the angle. If you grab the sun and move this, the angle of that sun, there is no corresponding slider for this. This is the only way to change the angle here of the sun. And it will change where the shadows are, so you can see that. And you can create day-night cycles just by moving the sun. So you start off in the east and then move down until you get to the brightness at the top, and then you move down and like that, and then you go to the west like that. So you could create a whole cycle, because this gizmo can be affected by keyframes and also the action recorder. Now, so this is an interesting one. So you can start off in this position, and then you can create your day cycle like this. I'm doing it incredibly roughly, but you get the idea. So there we go. I moved the sun around. That's just part of it, by the way, because you'll have to play with the sky box as well. Anyway, we'll record that. So we press the action recorder. That's recorded all my movements of the sun. Now, that's obviously a very quick movement, but you can change the animation speed. You can take that down to very, very slow and actually create an actual real timed style sun movement. So you can see that move. Now, it does mean that this sky is constantly flickering away like this, because it's constantly changing, which might not be an effect that you want. So there are other ways to do day-night cycles. I made one for my game that doesn't use this method, but it does move the sun. So you get a bit of a flickering while it transitions between the different day-night cycles. But it's not constantly flickering like that. It'll just flicker as it transitions, and it remains in that position for a certain amount of time and then moves. So, but this might be an option if that's what you want. Maybe you want to speed up time for an effect in a game. You could do something like this, which is an interesting effect with all the shadows moving and everything. Looks like time's speeding up. It might be fun to create a time speeding up effect by using this, and of course you can speed it right up. So like this. There's our day cycle. Whoops. Like that. Anyway, this is just a fun thing that you might be interested in. Right, this is the sun size. So sun brightness we've dealt with. That just changes the how bright the sun is on the world. The sun size, you can increase it and decrease this. This does not affect the brightness. This doesn't affect the light. What it does affect is how big the area in the sky that is representing the sun is. There we go. So that's what that does. And you can do it in the gizmo. You grab it and up and down on the D-pad to do the same thing. Though I think this is probably better if you use the slider. You've got more control. And also you're not moving it's very hard to keep it in the same position and move it at the same time and make it bigger at the same time without actually adjusting the position of that stick. So probably best if you want to do sun size to do it here. Right, you've also got a toggle, sun visible, not visible. Let's turn that sun on. Visible, non-visible. It's a toggle. This is also a toggle to cast shadows. So there we go. You can see the shadow here of this statue. We can turn it off, so that's casted. No, nothing will now cast a shadow. Now, if you look at because this is a group, it's a bit of a problem. Hang on. If you look inside here, you've got options here for cast shadows. You can actually turn the shadow off. I should have done it on the ball, shouldn't I? Because that's the thing that's really showing up here. No, that's the puppet. I want the ball. There we go. So there we go. I can turn the shadow off on the ball within its own settings here. But there's a thing that says always. But that is overridden by the sun not casting shadows. So even though you've got this as always, this overrides it. This just stops any objects. So if you want only specific sculpts not to cast shadows, then you're going to have to fiddle about with this in all of your sculpts, and don't touch this. But this is like overriding. It ignores all of these settings. But you know, never is always never, so you're good. Right, okay, so there's that. Let me just turn that back on. This one here, sun shadow scale versus detail, it's unlikely that you're going to play about with this. This apparently makes a difference if you've got a very small or very large set. But if I just play about with it now, you can see the shadow. You can get this sort of like misty look to everything, so there's no shadow at all. And then you've got like a crisper shadow, and then slightly pale, and as we get up, it sort of like gets softer and softer and softer. So it might be an effect that you want to just get very, very, very soft shadows. But to be honest, it's unlikely that you're going to play about with this very much. But it's always fun to play about with these gizmos and just see what effects that you can get. And it might be that you'll be playing about this one day, and a combination of a few things means you get a really interesting look that you like. So always play about with these gizmos, even if it doesn't look like it's doing very much. It might be that it's just in combination with other things it looks good. I didn't talk about the color here, but you can change the color of the light. Now let me say, coloring the color of the light will affect how objects look, especially objects like metallic effects. It can really alter the coloring of objects, and things will look completely different. And as you can see, that floor is now very pink. The floor is not pink. I haven't changed the colour of the floor. I've just changed the colour of the lighting. So be aware that changing the colour of the sun is going to affect the colours of your objects. So if you don't want that to happen, keep your sun as white. Now the sun by default is not white, it's yellow. So that's already affecting the natural colours of your objects. So be aware of that. Right, what really does affect things like the metallic objects though is the sky. So let me just, what I think I'll do is I'll make this ball metallic and shiny. So there we have a metallic and shiny ball, and I can make the light very red, and you just notice that red point of that reflection is now very red. It's a lot dark. Anyway, there we go. There's our shiny ball. It's a bit dark, so let's make that more of a metal, sort of steel looking thing. There we go. Now then, if I go into the sun and the sky and I start fiddling with the brightness, for example, let's take all the sky brightness out, so we get darker and darker. You'll notice now that our metal now is black, and it does not matter if I stick a light on it, it is still black, because the color of metallic objects is linked to the skybox color and brightness. So it's very difficult to get a metallic look on an object with a black skybox. You actually have to do something else in order to get a darkened sky, by putting domes over the top of your world and things like that, in order to have metal objects actually show up as metal. Because as soon as you start changing the colour of the skybox, it's going to change the colour of your metallic objects. So bear that in mind. That's one of the things that people only come across after they've built something, and they want, let's say they've got a dinner set out with not silvery knives and forks and stuff, and they want to make it look really good, so they're going to have a black sky behind, or a red sky or green sky or something, and then they realise, hang on a minute, why do my knives and forks suddenly look completely wrong? This is why, because it reflects the colour of the skybox, which is, it can be a little bit awkward, to be honest. But anyway, that's how it works. Let's get rid of that light. Right, so we've changed the colour of our skybox to this green colour, which is not that great. Right, so then we go back to the blue. Right, first of all, we got a slider for sky image. Now, this doesn't do an awful lot, let me say. It can do quite a lot, but it's not obvious what it does. So sky image is default at 0. We'll move it to 1, and everything goes brown. So these sky images do have colours associated with them. So if you don't touch this, you'll get a brown sky on that one, sort of a pinky mauvey colour one here, sort of a grey blue one there, another pinky one, a blue one, another blue one. So it does change the colour of the sky, but you can change it. So if you don't like the colour of the sky, you can change it. But what you look at is it's actually colouring the sky in a pattern. There is a pattern involved here. So if I go to 5 is very obvious because it's stripy. You can see the stripes of the colours there. So that's what it does, but it doesn't, it's not overly different between the different images. And when you realise that you can change the colour of it as well, it's not as if it's the colour of it that's important. It's the fact that that's yellowy there, a little bit green going into green and then back to yellow. So we got orangey here going into pink and then back to orange. So that's the look you're getting with that skybox. This one, I'm going to need to put sky tint intensity up, and that's the colours you get. So you can fiddle about with it, but that's all that is doing. It just gives you a slightly different pattern on it. Let's turn that off. Let's turn that back to the default. Is that the default? That's very white. There we go. There we go. So the second one is a little bit more obvious. So we start off with a circle sky fleck. Then you get a triangle. If you put it to 0, you get the squares. But the default is 1, which is the circles. Then you get triangles, hexagons. This is the sort of thing that you see on the paint tool. So you can change the design of the fleck type. So you can get very painterly effects there. Can be interesting to fiddle about with. Sky brightness. Now this does affect the world brightness. So the brighter this is, the brighter your world is. Pitch black sky. It's very common for people to turn all the brightness of it off and then stick lighting in. It's very good for making thumbnails for props and things, but like I say, you have that issue with silvery things, so not the best option, but you can change the sky brightness to things like this. This is rather nice for objects, this sort of colour. So you can fiddle about with that. This is the sky saturation. So depending on what colour you've picked, you're going to get different effects on sky saturation. Sky Hue Cycle, this will go through various different colours. Again, it will depend on where you are on this wheel, about how intense and how many different colours you get. So there we go, there's the sky colours, and again it depends on the sky tint intensity. So there we go, I've upped the intensity of the tint, and now the sky hue hardly changes it at all. So you've got to be aware. So that changes it to lots of different colours, but up this way it's very, very subtle. There we go. So different sliders can affect other sliders together. We've already looked at changing the colour of the sky like this, and unlike changing the colour of the sun, this has less of an impact on the colours of the objects unless they are metal or reflective in some way, because it's going to reflect the colour of the sky. Right, sky tint, tight sky tint we've just done. The horizon default is 85%. As you can see, it just makes the horizon more obvious. You can get rid of the horizon completely, and then you are in the sky basically. The default at 85% is what most people will leave it at. Then we've got fleck shade randomness. This just affects the density of the fleck. So if you have no randomness, they're all the same size. And if you have multiple randomness, while it settles itself down, you can see a lot more circles, because you've got lots of little ones and big ones and everything. It's got loads and loads of randomness in there. So it's going to affect the way the sky looks. But it's such a subtle check. That's quite a difference. But in between, you're not going to see very much until you get further over. 20% is the default. And then the fog. So if I change the fog to 0, you will see I can no longer see my statue, because it's pretty much invisible. If I go into play mode, I think I'm right on top of it, but I can't see it because the fog is at 0. So we move the fog away, and then we can start seeing it. Now this is a very foggy scene where there's a lot of fog. So that instead of just stamping down fogs, you could actually do this in order to get fog everywhere in your scene. But you notice there's no fog this side, it's just that side, attached to the sun skybox, coming out as a cone. So there we are. Now you've seen it. That's because it's very close. Because when we normally have it at 1000, it's a long way away, and we don't see it. So it's only foggy at distance. So you can play about with that and get some interesting effects, but probably you're not going to touch it. And if you want fog, you're going to just stamp a fog gadget in. So there you go. Hope that was useful for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in your dreams.